I went and saw Avengers Infinity War, and I got a cool deal on this Black Panther tin with popcorn in it, mainly because it's been showing in theaters for probably a couple of months, a month and a half by the time I went and saw Infinity War. And I would have gotten the $20 Avengers tin, but I was like, $10 versus $20. Maybe I can get an extra soda with that extra $10, so I went the Black Panther tin. Now I'll get into discussing Infinity War near the end of this video. But first I'll provide a summary of all the movies leading up to Infinity War, because Infinity War is a 10-year build-up to see. And there's quite a few movies that you gotta go through before you can watch Infinity War and understand it on any level, really. I got the list of movies off of IMDb. Also, I figured before I really get into getting into that, I'm going to just briefly mention that Stan Lee, who had a lot to do with the Marvel Comics, it makes a lot of cameos throughout this whole Marvel saga. Thought I'd just briefly mention it. The story takes place in the 1940s. Steve Rogers, who's a smart yet extremely underweight guy, he wants to be a soldier, but can't due to being too skinny. Then, a scientist sees something in Rogers and conducts an experiment, which turns Steve into Captain America. His arch-nemesis is the Red Skull, who was a failed experiment, whose true evil came out due to the experiment. Captain America has a best friend whom he calls Bucky, and Bucky dies off in the movie. Captain America has a love interest named Agent Carter, who he briefly gets to know and like before a plane crash leads to Captain America being frozen in ice, and the ending precludes the Avengers films. A billionaire named Tony Stark is an excellent inventor who's abducted, and he escapes by building a prototype version of the Iron Man suit. Eventually, he makes a final draft version of the suit, which he uses to fight against someone who he once thought was a friend. That character is played by Jeff Bridges, and he plays the enemy, and he does a great job. And he arranged Stark's kidnapping, and they fight, and Iron Man wins and announces his identity to the world. Edward Norton plays the Hulk character in this movie, and for the rest of the Hulk movie related parts, the character is played by Mark Ruffalo. In this movie, Bruce Banner is looking for a cure to the Hulk persona, but he's unable to find it. And that's pretty much the whole film summed up. Iron Man 2 focuses on Tony and his assistant Pepper's Potts' relationship, along with a stereotypical bad guy whose only reason for going after Stark is vague villain reasons. And Tony Stark's friend becomes an Iron Man as well in this film. This film has Thor, who's the god of thunder, come to Earth as punishment for being an arrogant person. Thor's brother Loki wants the throne that Thor has claim to. Thor falls in love with an Earth woman, but must return home after defeating the villain and earning his title back as God of Thunder. This movie has a collection of superheroes: Iron Man, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Hulk, Thor, Captain America, and they all work together as they assist Nick Fury and the Avengers initiative to defeat Loki, which they successfully do, saving New York. Another cliche bad guy in this film, but one thing I found very interesting in this film is Tony having to find himself without a suit, because the bad guy of the film separated Tony from his suit. And I really enjoyed how this film dealt with that, evolving Tony Stark's character a little bit. Loki's shape-shifting ability is shown in this film. There's another bad guy who's the main focus of the film. Loki supposedly dies in a heroic way in this film. And that's all I can really say. There's not really much to say about this film specifically. Okay, Captain America finds out Bucky's alive, but Bucky's more of an enemy until at the very end where he saves Captain America. And Captain America loses his first love interest. From the first movie, she got old and then she passes away in this film. It's kind of a sad thing to mention. This film shows how the Guardians met, and the film's very comedic. Peter Quill is the leader, and his team defeats the bad guys by using the Infinity Stone and zapping the bad guy with it as a team. The team has a raccoon who can talk, Gamora, who's a green lady, Groot, who's a tree person but gets killed off, and is kind of brought back as like a little tree child, Groot, at the very end. Just thought I'd mention that. A muscle man who's pale gray. He's a great part of the film's humor. Peter Quill also brings a lot of humor in this film as well. Well put together, very comedic, and great soundtrack. One of my favorite soundtracks to listen to. Peter Quill's mother passed away from cancer, and that was addressed in the first film. But in this film, Peter finds his father, who's a god of a planet of his own. But he's evil and gave Peter's mom cancer. Peter and his team defeat his father. Gamora has a sister who becomes on the good side after the second film ends. Thanos was Gamora's father figure, and that is addressed in the films, in the two films as well. Tony Stark and Bruce Banner create a conscious robot that by the end of the film is destroyed because he's evil. But Vision, another superhero, it gets created, and he's like a human computer. A briefly introduced character named Speedy, who's like Marvel's version of the Flash, gets killed off in this film and pretty much briefly introduced at the same time. So Paul Rudd plays a father who's trying to regain the trust of his family after he served time in prison. He steals a suit as part of that one last heist cliche. By successfully stealing that suit, he gains the respect of Michael Douglas's character, and he learns how to be Ant-Man. The daughter of Michael Douglas's character wants to be a superhero, and by the end of the first Ant-Man movie, the Wasp suit is shown, and Ant-Man gains the respect of his family. A reimagining of Peter Parker where he starts off already having his powers. Peter and Tony Stark are close. Tony's teaching Peter to be a good Spider-Man. Peter Parker's friend is a comic relief. His aunt's a pretty lady. I know this because the movie pointed out several times. It's a good solo Spider-Man film, though it's tough for me to understand how Tony Stark figured out Peter Parker was Spider-Man when literally no one else did, until they saw Peter in his suit. A War Among Friends, where Captain America ends up saving Bucky, and Iron Man separates from being friends with Captain. Spider-Man joined the fight along with Ant-Man, and Black Panther is briefly introduced. A complex movie where a man, after his accident, loses his hand abilities. Pretty much like he's like a surgeon, and he loses the ability to really make his hands function. And then he ends up joining a group of men who control realities. Doctor Strange is what the man goes by the end of the movie, and he's able to help control realities. A comedic take on Thor that's self-aware, and it's an interesting story about how Thor's sister comes to destroy Thor's land, and Thor defeats her with help from a team he put together, with Loki, who's actually alive, and the Hulk helping Thor, who gets his hair cut as well. Thor's father also passes in this film, It's interesting to see Thor change to being a humorous character. In the first two films, he's more of a serious character. Thor loses an eye defeating his villainous sister. Okay, this movie mostly takes place in the African village of Wakanda, or African area of Wakanda, I believe. This movie goes through the Black Panther ritual, and the movie questions who's more deserving of being Black Panther. There's pretty much the good guy and the bad guy, but both have claim to the throne. Luckily, the good guy wins, and he's able to be the right fit for Black Panther. Thanos is here, and he's the ultimate bad guy. In the opening, he easily kills off Loki and leaves Thor out in space. Hulk's thrown to Earth and disappears into Bruce Banner, and that becomes Bruce's issue for the rest of the film. Guardians of the Galaxy cast meets Thor, and they give him a new eye. Thor goes off to rebuild his hammer, which was destroyed in Ragnarok. That subplot happens, and Thor gets his hammer. Guardians, except Gamora, who's killed off by Thanos, meet the Avengers. There's two battles occurring, one with Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, and the Guardians of the Galaxy, and the other over in Wakanda, with Captain America, Black Panther, Bruce Banner, Vision, and Scarlet Witch. Vision sacrifices himself, but that goes nowhere because Thanos gets all of his Infinity Stones, and the main characters fade off, like Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Black Panther, and most of the Guardians of the Galaxy except for Rocket. And Thanos walks in as a badass, and by the end of this movie, he still won. I watched the film in theaters and was like, wow. And I waited out to the post-credits sequence, and that showed Agent Fury fade out, and with one of the female S.H.I.E.L.D. members, who was focused in the first Avengers film. Pretty much all the Avengers were in this movie, but the question is, like, where's Hawkeye? The end credit sequence may hint towards Ant-Man, who wasn't in this movie. I figure Hawkeye has a big part to do with the fourth Avengers installment. I just want to say that Infinity War took preconceptions and turned them around. And I made predictions going into this movie, and a large majority of them were wrong. It was a good movie. Now I want to briefly discuss Spider-Man Homecoming 2. I think it may be about possibly two different things. If it's post-Infinity War, it could focus on finding the next Spider-Man. Or if it's pre-Infinity War, it could be showing how Peter goes up against another big bad guy like Venom. And I only have one prediction for the fourth Avengers movie, and that's that Ant-Man's in it, and Hawkeye will have a huge part to play as well. Hopefully all my predictions are somewhat accurate. For this segment, I'd like to talk about upcoming Marvel films that look really interesting. The first one I want to talk about is Ant-Man and the Wasp, which comes out in 2018. And it's very soon that it'll come out. And this movie is basically, I think the story takes place before Infinity Wars. And that's about all I know. And the trailer looks very interesting with showing the duo of Ant-Man and the Wasp really working together. And I'm hoping that it's a really good film. The next one I want to talk about is Captain Marvel, which is in 2019. From what I've read, the story is about a woman named Carol Danvers, and her character has to deal with an intergalactic war of some sort. The story sounds like it has good potential. Since it's in 2019, we'll just have to wait and see. And then there's Venom in 2018. I saw the trailer for the film and thought, wow, this is going to be a great anti-hero film. I saw the depiction of Venom in Spider-Man 3, but I didn't feel the character was developed enough. And hopefully this film gives the full picture of who Venom is. Other Marvel movies I'd recommend. After talking about interesting upcoming Marvel films, I want to just mention some other cool Marvel movies I saw and really enjoyed. Alright, so the first one is the X-Men saga, the prequels, the original, Logan and his origins. It was really cool to see, and the prequels made the X-Men universe quite detailed because you got to see how the characters really started out. Wolverine, he got 3 separate films going from his origins to his farewell in Logan. And in the film Logan, in my opinion, the whole X-Men saga is just worth diving into, honestly. Just, if you watch the X-Men saga and you're into, like, you know, Marvel films, you'll really enjoy it. Deadpool and the upcoming sequel. I saw the first Deadpool film in theaters, and I couldn't stop laughing. I heard that the second film's test screening went better than the originals. I'm eager to see the second one in theaters. Now, I wrote this a little while ago, and then I recently got a chance to see the sequel. And I gotta say, I was laughing really hard at it. And I know some people are like here and there with it, but I couldn't stop laughing at it, and I kept thinking about the story after I saw it, and I really enjoyed it. Now, the Spider-Man trilogy with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, that was like in the early to mid 2000s. I saw this saga on VHS, and I love the story of Peter Parker. This trilogy has some cheesy parts, like with the third movie and Peter Parker shows his dance moves randomly in the street. But it's a fun series of films to watch. The first Ghost Rider film, which was also, I believe, in the mid-2000s. Nicolas Cage makes this film great with how over-the-top he plays the Ghost Rider character. I loved it. Now, the second one, I'm not the biggest fan of. But the first one I really enjoyed. Also, moving on to the first Fantastic Four movie. It's another one that I saw on VHS, and I just enjoyed how well the Fantastic Four story was put together. Chris Evans, who also plays Captain America, plays a polar opposite kind of character in this. He plays Johnny, a cocky kid made superhero. I enjoyed all of the lead actors' performances in this film, and Dr. Doom is quite scary in this film. And to conclude, I hope that you all enjoyed this video, and make sure to hit the subscribe button if you want to see more upcoming videos. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
I'm Thanos, sir. I'm going to destroy the Marvel Universe. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah.